Hey guys, so today we're going to be doing another Letterboxd recap. This is for the month of March. I swear filming these videos makes it seem like the year is like flying by. The fact that we're done with March blows my mind. So although I watched 23 movies in the month of March, we're hardly going to talk about any of them. I know I'm really selling the video to you. It's really entertaining, right? We're gonna be minimally talking about 23 movies. But it's because I watched a lot of these movies for the sake of my Netflix video. So I've already covered a lot of these movies and like my opinions. A lot of them were rewatches because it had been so long since I had seen them on Netflix. So if you want more in-depth descriptions for them, go check out my last video of my Netflix horror videos. Also, I think 14 of them were rewatches. Like I said, some for the Netflix video, but also just because I wanted to rewatch some good movies. My birthday, I rewatched two of my favorite movies, which you'll see. So some months I just rewatch a lot more movies than other months. I don't know. And also the few that we're gonna talk about aren't really horror movies. So wasn't, you know, I watched a lot of horror in March, but I've already talked about it recently, so we're not gonna be repetitive here. The first movie I want to talk about is actually one that I skipped over in my February Letterboxd review for some reason, and that was Rent-A-Pal. This came out in 2020 and it was streaming on Hulu, and this is set in 1990 and follows a lonely bachelor named David who rents VHS tapes trying to find companionship when he stumbles upon Andy, a charismatic and charming host who starts to become more important to David than he expected, and this friendship comes at a price. This is hands down one of my favorite indie movies that I have seen lately. I was blown away by this. It's definitely more thriller, on the thriller side than like horror, but this was such an amazing horror movie. Everything about it was entertaining. The setting was so iconic. Like, I love the 90s. It's set in my birth year, so it was very nostalgic for me. The acting was incredible. Like, the actors cast for this were perfect, and I was completely hooked from the beginning. It does end up a little bit predictable, but besides that, the whole story was amazing. It's just such a great movie. If you have Hulu, you need to watch Rent-A-Pal, or even if you don't, try to find Rent-A-Pal. It's so good. So now moving on to my March viewings. The first one on March 1st was Elysium from 2013. Like I said, we got some random movies this month, okay? This was a rewatch for me. Matt Damon is one of my favorite actors, in case you didn't know. I know it's kind of random, but he's like a comfort actor for me, if that makes sense. Like, I'll just pop on one of his movies if I'm like in a down mood or sad or anything like that, and it just so comforting. I don't know what it is about him. Also, I love anything to do with dystopian or sci-fi or anything like that. And Elysium, I love the plot of this movie, and I love this movie a lot. Oh, by the way, Rent-A-Pal I rated 4 out of 5 stars on Letterboxd, and Elysium was 3 stars, which actually it needs to be so much more. Like, why did I put 3 stars? I really like Elysium. I mean, it's not perfect. It's kind of cheesy, but I love that movie. Next up, we have The Ruins. Already talked about it. Netflix, Death of Me, Netflix, Circle, Netflix, The Endless. I already talked about it in my Netflix video, so those 4 movies we're just gonna skip on over. And then I watched I Care a Lot, which was a new 2020 movie. This follows a shady legal guardian who tries taking advantage of the wrong elderly woman. This had an amazing cast. Obviously, it's not really a horror movie. I think it's described as thriller comedy. Not really my genre. I'm not a huge fan of comedies, but it had an amazing cast. I love Peter Dinklage, so I had really high hopes going into this, and seeing everyone talk about it, it was pretty hyped up, but I was honestly kind of disappointed with this movie. It just had so much unrealistic violence and inconsistencies when it came to the plot and stuff like that, that it was so hard to get past, like look over. And it's disappointing because I feel like this movie had so much potential. Like, if this was done as a more serious tone movie and like drama thriller instead of comedy, and they didn't try so hard to be comedic, I think this movie would have been amazing. You know, like Gone Girl type. Ryan's on the patio right now and Pepe wants to join him. So anyway, if it had like the similar vibe of Gone Girl, for instance, I feel like that would have been more successful for this kind of movie, because the plot was so interesting to me. Obviously pretty unrealistic, but it was entertaining. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars on Letterboxd. Next up, I watched The Martian again. Matt Damon. I watched a lot of Matt Damon movies in March. I'm just gonna warn you now. The Martian is one of my favorite space movies of all time. It's incredible, incredible. And then we have Hellfest, which was a Netflix movie. I loved this movie. This was one of my favorite discoveries of March, was Hellfest, because although I gave it 3 out of 5 stars on Letterboxd, it probably deserves a little bit more. It's one of those cheesy, classic Halloween movies to me now. Like, for some reason, cheesy Halloween movies are just such like a great genre. So as I was on a Matt Damon kick, Ryan was on a Seth Rogen kick. So we have a couple Seth Rogen movies that I watched in March as well. I've never really been like a huge Seth Rogen person. He does mostly comedies, and like I said, it's not really my genre. So the 2 Seth Rogen movies that we ended up watching are This Is the End, which that was a great movie. I was honestly pleasantly surprised at how much I enjoyed that movie. It was very cheesy, but I love apocalypse settings, even if it's in a comedy. And the Emma Watson stuff was great. It was entertaining. I had never seen it, so it was interesting. And then we have Observe and Report, which was also another entertaining movie. And then the next 3 movies, again, Netflix movies that I watched for that video: Case 39, The Black Coat's Daughter, and Nobody Sleeps in the Woods Tonight. The Black Coat's Daughter is another one that I'm really happy I rediscovered in March, and that was one of my favorite movies that I actually watched in March, because the first time I watched it, I didn't really like it because I don't think I got it. But now watching it, such a beautiful movie, and I am now obsessed with The Black Coat's Daughter. What did I rate it? 4 out of 5 stars on Letterboxd. It was amazing. One of my favorites. Also, Nobody Sleeps in the Woods Tonight. Highly underrated. I already talked about it, obviously. All these movies I already talked about on my Netflix video, but that was another gem that I was really happy I discovered, and definitely one that I am going to rewatch. So then we get to my birthday. On my birthday, the 2 movies that I chose to watch are Downsizing from 2017, again, Matt Damon. Are we surprised? I am obsessed with Downsizing. I actually just got it on DVD, and I love this. Does anyone else like Downsizing? Because I feel like nobody likes it. It's such a random movie. Like, the plot of it makes no sense at all, but it is so entertaining and comforting. Like, ultimate comfort movie to me is Downsizing. And then the other movie that I watched on my birthday was Triangle, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. Obviously, you guys already know this. Love, love, love Triangle. Next up, we have Prom Night, The Invitation, and As Above, So Below. 3 movies for my Netflix video. I watched a lot of Netflix in the month of March, and again, a lot of rewatches. Pretty much all of them were rewatches. And then I watched Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, restarting my Harry Potter marathon. Do that about twice a year, so you're gonna see that be a pattern here. Okay, so the last 2 movies that I watched, oh, you know what? I totally forgot. I don't even know where these go, to be honest. I watched Saw 2 and Saw 3 in the month of March as well, and I honestly, Saw 3 has been my favorite Saw movie for a really long time, but after watching Saw 2 and 3 back to back, well, I'm on a marathon right now, so I'm watching all of them back to back, but I realized that I really enjoy Saw 2 a lot. I mean, obviously the first one is iconic, but I always thought that I liked 3 more than 2, but now I'm feeling like 2 might take a lead here in a list and a ranking. Hint, hint. For a future video. Anyway, so the last 2 movies I want to talk about for this Letterboxd recap are ones that I actually do want to like get into. So the first one being The Reef from 2010. This is based on true events, and it's an Australian horror movie that follows a group of friends on a sailing trip when their boat sinks and they're stranded in shark-infested waters. So this was a new watch for me. That was technically a horror movie. Again, it's a shark movie, so to me it's more like thrillery, but there was some like gore in it, so I feel like it was pretty horror-y. But it's a pretty standard shark movie, and I was a little bit disappointed, which is saying a lot because I really love cheesy shark movies, or cheesy water movies, if you will. And I love open water, 47 meters down, like The Shallows even, like those kind of cheesy shark movies I'm really into, and this one just really didn't get my attention as much as I had hoped it would. It was kind of, I just put it on a whim. It was on Amazon Prime, and I was like, sure, I'll watch that. But it definitely wasn't anything special. I think because it was based on true events, they didn't really do anything fantastical with it or anything like too unrealistic. It did feel pretty real. But other than that, it was just like average, very average shark movie to me, and not even in a good way where it's like I'll rewatch it. Okay, so now lastly, we're gonna talk about my favorite movie that I watched in March, and will probably be one of my favorite movies that I watch in all of 2021. So that's saying a lot. Another Earth from 2011. You need to watch this movie right now. Stop whatever you're doing. Go watch this movie. It's not a horror movie by any means. It is a sci-fi drama movie. But if you're into Interstellar, Melancholia, anything like that, like sci-fi dramas, you need to watch Another Earth if you have not seen it yet. This follows a young woman that's just released from prison who seeks out the man whose life she ruined by a car accident years prior. Also, there's another Earth that appears in the sky, moon and all. I became instantly obsessed with this movie. Like, it makes me angry. Like, the plot is so frustrating to watch because it's a lot. It's very emotional. This movie is so emotional, but it is so beautiful, and it's one of those tragic, dramatic movies that is so entertaining. It's not like brutal in the sense that you feel emotionally exhausted after or anything like that. It's tragic, but it's so good. This has introduced me to Britt Marling, who I'm now obsessed with. Had no idea. She's actually one of the writers of Another Earth, and she also was one of the creators of the OA, which a lot of people have said that I would enjoy if I liked this movie, that I should check out that. And if she created it and it's anything similar to Another Earth, I think for sure I would love it. I know it's canceled, but I still kind of want to check out what is available. So if I'm going to recommend any movie that I watched that was a new watch for me in the month of March, definitely Another Earth. Other than that, not really anything new that I watched that I would recommend, but Black Coat's Daughter was also another favorite of March. So those are like the top 2 movies that I watch. I mean, besides my favorites, like Downsizing. But I can't really recommend that for everyone because people are gonna think it's bad and cheesy, but I don't care. I love that movie. And Triangle, of course, but you already know about Triangle, so I don't need to like drill it into you again. And Harry Potter. Obviously, great movie every time, always, as above, so below. Great. So it was a good movie month. I watched a lot of movies. I think this is the month with the most movies watched in the year of 2021 so far. So, but unfortunately a lot of rewatches. So, oh, Rent-A-Pal, technically from February, but go watch that if you haven't yet, because that one will not disappoint you. Okay, so there you have my Letterboxd recap. I'm sorry if it's a little bit shorter than normal, despite it being like 23 movies long. Hopefully in the month of April, I can get to my recommended list, because as always, I ask you guys to leave a movie that you want me to talk about in one of these future videos that you want me to just check out and then briefly talk about in a video to hear my thoughts on. So if you want to keep doing that, I can keep adding to my list of recommended movies. I'm sorry I had to focus on this Netflix video for the month of March, but please leave some movie recommendations down below, and hopefully in April I can watch a ton of new movies and not do a bunch of rewatches, but no promises. Can't say that I'll promise that. Anyway, tell me your favorite movies that you checked out in the month of March down in the comments. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.